So first of all, I'd like to introduce Brett McClen, the Chief Viticulturist at Brown Brothers, where he oversees the management of approximately 800 hectares of company-owned vineyards spread across 7 sites throughout Victoria and Tasmania. Brett graduated with an honours degree in agricultural science in 1996, and Brett's been spending the last 18 years working in large-scale vineyard management in highly varied climates, including the Sunraysia, northeast Victoria and Tasmania. So please welcome Brett McClen, Chief Viticulturist at Brown Brothers.
Thank you, Rob. It's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to present to such a progressive group of people in my hometown in Wangaratta, which is terrific. Unfortunately, I'm not quite as erudite or as eloquent as Professor Orty, so I need to get out from behind the lectern to get noticed. But what I'd like to talk about today is Brown Brothers' experience with climate change. How Brown Brothers has incorporated climate change into its business strategy and what it is about our business that has enabled us to respond to this challenge. So Brown Brothers is a family-owned, multi-generational wine business. And over the past 130 years, we've experienced lots of challenges, including droughts, fires, frosts, floods, phylloxera, economic recessions and the global financial crisis. The expectation is that the business is going to go another 130 years, and there are going to be a lot of challenges within that time, and one of which will be climate change. So what I'm going to talk about today is what, as a business, Brown Brothers had observed with climate, and then what our tipping point was, what really made us sit up and take notice and realise that we needed to take some sort of action about it, and then how we've adapted to climate change since taking that decision, and I'll focus a bit on expansion into new regions. So most of our experience with climate change really probably started in the 2000s, around the millennial drought. A lot of it was to do with heat waves and so on. We dealt with severe water shortages. We had to spend over $4 million worth of water purchases in the 2007-08 season. We were getting really a much earlier ripening and much more compressed ripening. So instead of vintage taking 90 days, it was happening in 60 days. Things were ripening so fast we couldn't get them in on time, so a lot more sugar, a lot more alcohol in wines. We were getting quality effects on white grapes and red grapes, and it was really starting to impact upon our business and our ability to make the quality wines that we need to make. The biggest one of all was smoke taint, and that was really unheard of for us before 2003. But within that decade, we had 3 instances, particularly the 2006-2007 bushfires. We basically had to write off an entire vintage worth of grapes at one of our vineyards in the King Valley. We lost shelf space, we lost momentum with those products, and the flow-on effects for that were absolutely enormous. Smoke is a really insidious thing. It perfuses into the grapes, it taints the wine, it's difficult to measure, it's sometimes not apparent for some time after the vintage, and we now treat it as our #1 agricultural risk. We see that as a bigger risk than we see the traditional agricultural risks like hail or frost and so on. So at that point we really thought, well, what's going on here? Is this just bad luck? Is it coincidence, or is there some sort of change going on that's causing these sorts of things? Because within a 10-year period we had a lot of really challenging vintages. There were different opinions at senior levels within the management on climate change. So the board decided to get some external expertise in, and Graham Anderson from the DPI came and presented to the board in 2008. And he showed lots of sort of scary graphs about where temperatures and so on had been and over the past century and where they were headed over the next century. And it was at that point that the business decided there's enough evidence here that this is a fundamental shift in what is going on, and it decided it really needed to adopt a position on that. So the board adopted a resolution to accept a 2-degree increase in temperature, and that had to be laid over the longer term assumptions, any capital projects, any vineyard plantings and so on. So probably the actual figure of 2 degrees is probably not the critical thing. I think it's the philosophy of adopting a position, taking a position on climate change, that was the real key in that resolution. And the first thing we did was say, okay, if things are going to increase 2 degrees, how's that going to look for our vineyards? Initially, there were some opportunities from that. So the Mystic Park vineyard is up near Swan Hill, and our biggest selling wine is Moscato. We'd traditionally sourced all of our Moscato grapes from sort of up around Mildura and so on, because it really needs to get nice and ripe. But we thought, well, if it's going to be warmer at Mystic Park, it might work well for us. So we embarked upon a grafting program, and we now grow 20% of our Moscato grapes at our Mystic Park vineyard. But it really presented some problems for us at the cooler end of the spectrum, so in the higher vineyards that we had in the King Valley, and where we get our sparkling grapes and some of our sort of finer, more elegant white wines, and that was going to be a problem. So we started looking for cooler grapes. We literally hit the books, hit the road and so on, and had a look around. So it was somewhat fortuitous that in 2010 our CEO was contacted about an opportunity, some vineyards that were up for sale in Tasmania. And we acquired 3 vineyards, some brands and a winery in Tasmania from Guns in 2010. Now, Tasmania is a really cool climate. So what I'm just showing there is mean January temperature. It's the average of nighttime, daytime temperatures for the month. And you can see how much cooler our 2 Tasmanian vineyards are compared to the King Valley. Tasmania is right up there with some of the most prestigious wine growing regions in Europe in terms of its ability for cool climate wine styles. For us, it provided an opportunity to play in a category that we weren't in at that point in time, and that's Pinot Noir. I promise this isn't a marketing presentation. I just want to give you a little case study just in how that's gone for us since. So in 2011, our CEO adopted what we thought was a pretty ambitious target, which was Devil's Corner was a pretty small brand then, and we decided that within 5 years it would become the highest selling Pinot Noir in Australia. So March 2012, you can see there we're at number 8. Yeah, we're pretty parochial, so we're watching these bloody Kiwis and who are dominating the market. So another 12 months on, and then by July 2014, we become the number 1 selling Pinot Noir. And then since then, we're getting further ahead. Tasmania is really enjoying this clean green image. But what it is, the message about this that I want to convey is that it was that decision to take a position on climate change. We'd done the thinking on that. So when an opportunity came, we were ready to act. And then the performance of this has just gone beyond anyone's dreams of what it was going to be when we made that acquisition. So it created an opportunity, and the opportunity has far exceeded anything we ever expected. It's enabled us to invest in this sort of infrastructure, these weird way out sort of cellar doors on the east coast of Tasmania and so on. I'll just fast forward there in the interest of time. Now, it's not all about Tassie for us. On the mainland, we're investigating new varietals. We've got half a dozen of these up at our Mystic Park vineyard, and they're being bred by the CSIRO, so they're crossbreeds of all sorts of varieties, but they're bred to deliver superior quality in a warming climate. So grapes that can grow in quite a hot climate deliver superior quality, berry chemistry, and so on. And these varieties are also very water use efficient, so that the idea being that we can grow more tonnes per megalitre of water that we would irrigate with. It's really about, for us, resilience. Brown Brothers is a long-term company. It is every intention that future generations are going to have a very viable business to work in. So that ability to take a long-term view has been a key to our ability to adapt. Innovation, leadership. The leadership on this issue is transparent from the board through senior management to all levels of management. And the attitude, Brown Brothers is not pretentious. We take great pride in our ability to sell fruity wines or frizzante wine styles that people really enjoy. We listen to the consumer, and it's that ability, I think, to not be bound by, the wine industry is quite traditional. Spent a lot of years probably telling consumers what they should be drinking, whereas our approach is more to listen to consumers, and I think it's that sort of agility to be able to think outside the square that really helped in our expansion to Tasmania also. Summary from our experience would be that planning timeframes are long. It's important not to be paralysed by indecision, and Professor Audie touched on that earlier as well. It wasn't until our board made a decision to take a position on climate change that then we were ready to react to opportunities as they came along. Opportunities, and it's a culture, I think, within an organisation of embracing opportunities of innovation and so on that really enables you to change and to adapt to challenges such as climate change. Thank you very much.